Joining me now, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, really good, right guy, right time with serendipitous timing with you, sir. Wow, the deal blew up. We were shocked in newsrooms. I'm sure they were shocked in the courtroom. Were you shocked in the halls of the Senate?
No, Eric, I have to admit I was not shocked. As you know, I do a podcast every week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, called Verdict with Ted Cruz. Today's podcast was entirely or primarily about this hearing this morning, where, among other things, I pointed out that the federal judge had issued an order to show cause why she should not sanction Hunter Biden's lawyers for calling the court and misrepresenting that they actually worked for House Republicans instead of for Hunter Biden. And so going into it, I expected there to be a lot of fireworks at this hearing today. And I got to say, I'm very glad this deal blew up. This deal stunk from day one. This was a sweetheart deal. It was designed to be a slap on the wrist to Hunter Biden to ensure that he served no jail time, to cover up the worst of the criminal offenses he committed. But Eric, the most important purpose of this deal, I believe, was to protect Joe Biden, to cover up and cut off further investigation into Joe Biden's personal culpability in corruption and criminal activity. And I think there has been so much attention on that lately that that's what led DOJ to backtrack and say, well, given all of this new evidence, we're continuing to investigate. And that's in turn what led Hunter Biden's lawyers to say, well, never mind, and cause the whole thing to blow up.
Do you think that the purpose, Senator? Or, I have this theory that they called it an ongoing investigation to protect Joe Biden from, or the briefing room, even Jean-Pierre, from having to explain what they thought about what the proceedings were. And they said, well, it's open, so we can't talk about it. Meanwhile, it turned out and bit him on the backside.
Well, look, there is some of that at play, and I got to say the Department of Justice and the FBI have stonewalled congressional inquiries almost from the very beginning. When I've asked DOJ, when I've asked the FBI, their consistent responses, they refuse to answer any serious questions about their investigations. And you're right, one of the dodges they use is that it's an ongoing investigation. But I got to say, if this hearing had been the day after the plea bargain was announced, I think DOJ would have said, yep, we're done here. This resolves everything. And you might have seen the judge sign off on it. Unfortunately, for the folks trying to cover up the misconduct and criminal activity here, the hearing came several weeks after the plea bargain, and in between, the House of Representatives held multiple hearings, including hearings with 2 IRS whistleblowers that had damning testimony about the Department of Justice engaged in obstruction of justice covering up, had damning testimony about Attorney General Merrick Garland lying to Congress under oath, actually in response to questioning that I asked him about. And I think given that, DOJ is much more skittish because they realize that the evidence against them is looking really bad, and they were much more reluctant to say, nope, we're not even going to look into any of these allegations. That's a big part of what caused the blow up today.
What about, I don't know, Devin Archer is going to testify that he had witnessed, firsthand witnessed of Hunter Biden calling Joe Biden his father, and business dealings were transacted. And that's only a few days away. That may have something to do with what happened today. Yeah.
So it has a ton to do with it, and this was the other half of what I discussed in my podcast today, is the White House dramatically changed its story yesterday on Joe Biden's involvement with Hunter Biden's overseas corrupt business deals. For years, what Joe Biden on the campaign trail had said and what the White House has said is Joe Biden has never discussed business dealings with Hunter, has never discussed. That's what they said over and over and over and over again. As you noted, Devin Archer is getting ready to testify to the House that Joe Biden discussed it over 24 times, including talking repeatedly with these overseas oligarchs who were paying Hunter. The White House realized they had a problem. So yesterday, when Karine Jean-Pierre was asked, she said, I've answered this question 1,000 times. I'm going to tell you the exact same thing I've said every time before. She said, Joe Biden was never in business with Hunter Biden. Now, mind you, that's not what she said every time before. What she said before is Joe Biden never talked to Hunter about his business deals. And last night they tried to flip it to, well, he wasn't in business with Hunter. They weren't formally partners. It was an attempt to run away from their repeated lies that he'd never discussed the corrupt overseas business deals with Hunter, because the House is hearing testimony this week that Joe Biden did many, many times. And I got to tell you, most of the corporate media utterly ignored the dramatic switch of story from the White House yesterday.
Well, we actually highlighted, but here's what would be interesting, and I bring this up because I'd like you to weigh in on this. A potential Biden impeachment. McCarthy said that he's looking into an inquiry of whether or not it's time to impeach Biden. I mean, you want to put Karine Jean-Pierre on the stand and have her testify that she didn't move the goalpost and lie to the American people. But what are your thoughts on a Biden impeachment and then also a potential Trump indictment, which may come down any minute now?
Yeah, look, I think the House needs to open an inquiry into impeaching Joe Biden. I have called for Alejandro Mayorkas to be impeached. I've called for the House to move forward on impeaching Merrick Garland. And I think with Joe Biden, it depends on what the evidence proves. If you read the FD 1023, the FBI report that details the allegations from the confidential human source, if those allegations are true, then Joe Biden, as the sitting vice president, solicited and received a multi-billion-dollar bribe from a foreign national in exchange for official favors as vice president of the United States. If that's true, he is guilty of bribery, and of course he should be impeached and removed from office. We don't know if those allegations are true. They are merely allegations. The House needs to investigate it. If they're proven to be true, he should be impeached, he should be prosecuted, and he should go to jail. I will say this, the evidence keeps mounting up, and every day it looks worse and worse and worse for Joe Biden's direct culpability in official corruption.
And so there's a special counsel for Trump for everything he's done and a potential indictment coming. No special counsel assigned to the Hunter Biden story or even the Joe Biden story. What about a Trump indictment? What are your thoughts on that, sir?
Yeah. Look, I think a Trump indictment would be an abuse of power. I think each of the Trump indictments we've seen so far are abuses of power. They are politicizing the Justice Department. This Department of Justice, this Attorney General, this FBI is the most politicized and weaponized we've ever seen. The Democrats hate democracy. They are deathly afraid the voters will choose to elect Donald Trump. They don't want that to happen, and so they are trying to use the machinery of law enforcement to prosecute him. I think these indictments are a disgrace, and I think Merrick Garland should be impeached and removed from office for allowing the Department of Justice to be turned into a partisan hammer to attack the political enemies of the White House.
Indeed, indeed. Sir, before we let you go, Mitch McConnell had a bit of a scary moment earlier today.
Yeah.
Do you know anything, any news on what's going on, what happened, and how is he? He says he's fine, but is he?
You know, I don't know. I saw Mitch right before that at lunch. He seemed fine at lunch. He did appear to have a health scare shortly thereafter. I don't know the details. I can tell you I'm praying for him. I hope he is fine and recovers. I can tell you he is tough as hell and stubborn as a mule. So I hope he recovers his health and strength, but I don't know any information beyond what is publicly known.
All right, Senator, really good having you. Appreciate your time, sir. Senator Ted Cruz, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.